have the setup in Shell that we have strictly separated reporting from analytics. So there is a larger reporting team that does all the reporting and the bar charts and the more sort of production type of work. We do more the statistics. Can we do any predictive analysis? Can we find drivers? So that's our job. I'll present the case study a little after, and Marcello will cover the data privacy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be the first one running the marathon around the room, I guess. My name is Marcello Melpignano. I'm the data privacy manager for HR and corporate in Shell. My team is not here. I've got 24 people a bit around the whole world. What am I responsible? Well, I hold the agenda for HR in data privacy. Within HR, we have a big department around compliance, and compliance, of course, data privacy is part of it. So I'll start the presentation today, and I'll start with one of the most interesting slides you will ever see, which, oops, technology. Oh, there you go. So I do expect that you're all speed readers, so you will be able to go through this in the next 5 seconds. What it says, just don't invest in Shell because of what we're going to tell you. Not that we're going to tell you something not true, but we are legally obliged to tell you this is a presentation, we're doing a case study, it's not real data what you will see around this. Next slide, I guess, is going to be more interesting, which is about introducing a bit Shell, and I don't think this is working. Is it? Oh, okay, takes a little bit. Most of you will know Shell from our gas stations. They will know our Shell logo, the Pecton, red and yellow colors. However, Shell is very proud to be one of the few energy providers that can run the end-to-end process. And I want to just use this slide to show you very quickly what I mean with that. In Shell, we are really, from the production point of view, we are divided in two parts, upstream and downstream. Upstream is anything that is related with looking for energies, building the structure to find the resources, and then move it across. Now, what that means, as you can see, we got our nice boat. Let me see if this works here. We have our nice boat scanning the oceans, looking for the right fields. We have, of course, fields. We've got our production areas. Once we find something, once we find our resources, we use our maritimes to move those resources to our refining areas. Now, in these refinings, of course, refineries, we actually are able to make oil from any type of product that we can find. It's actually in Rotterdam, in Pernis, there is the only refinery in the world that can work any type of material. As part of here, we are now moving into our downstream area. As part of downstream, we also have a quite big business and growing around producing wine power. It's actually really important for us to keep continuing on improving our technology. So not just oil and gas, we also look at the wind power. And then, of course, there is the last part. That's all about selling our products. Make sure that we can give the customers the best experience. And selling our products for us, it means going into the businesses, selling to big companies, our retail stations. Sorry, I cannot point out. Our retail stations, and then, of course, the customers. You know, you and me going to a gas station, but also you and me using gas in our houses for anything that we use gas for in the house. Data privacy. Now, that's a big journey in Shell. It started, I guess, about 20, 25 years ago, funny enough. But of course, it creates a lot of attention and attraction since the last 6, 7 years. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the data privacy legislation, but since 6 or 7 years, the European laws have become really restrictive around data privacy, how you use it, when you use the data, and who you give the access to the data to. Therefore, we have really raised our game up in Shell for data privacy. When I talk about data privacy, even though we are into an HR, I would say, conference, I'm not talking only about HR data, because HR data most probably you will recognize as the employee information. When we talk about data privacy in Shell, we talk everything. So investors' information, customers' information. I don't know how many of you are from Holland, but actually around Europe, we have a program, a Euro Shell card, and that's a program that we sell to our customers where they can go and get advantages in a gas station. Therefore, if I can go to the next slide. Am I too far? Yeah. I'll move on this side. There you go. Data privacy is here. Therefore, when we talk about data privacy, we are really talking about everything that we can think about personal data, right? So my name, Marcello Melpignano, that makes already personal information. Therefore, we need to protect it. So you are allowed to use my name. I'm sharing it with you. Data privacy. The journey in share. What I'm going to show you is a little bit where we started. Okay, thank you. Where we started, but also how we look at data privacy and how data privacy really opened the keys for doing HR analytics for our colleagues. And Esther will then talk after that. When we started the journey in data privacy, or improved the journey in data privacy 6 years ago, is it me?
It's private.
Oh, that's all. Am I too far, maybe? Oh, no, that's not me. Shall I try again? Yeah, that's me, I think. Let's give it another go. So when I started in my job about 7 years ago now, data privacy was really seen in Shell as an obstacle. Why? And not that we weren't doing data privacy, not that we were just selling the data of our customers or employees to other companies, but it was an obstacle. Why? Because every time I would be talking to my colleagues in HR, in IT, they would say, yeah, you're introducing a lot of risks to our project. You know, you're really giving us a lot of problems for our IT infrastructure. We need to put all this control in place. And why? You are just coming and tell us that. I say, well, yeah, I'm Italian, pay attention to what you do. But I also, I try to help them understanding that, by implementing proper data privacy regulations, you're actually going, helping your customer needs because you are setting up a proper IT infrastructure. And not just that, we try to make sure that you can work this system around all the different countries where we work. Now, Shell is present in over 90 countries in the world, so there is, not all the countries have strict data privacy legislation, but there is a lot of legislations to look at. So this was a big obstacle for our IT colleagues, but eventually with the time we came across it. And how did we manage that? Well, we managed that by showing them that actually from an obstacle we can become enabler with the data privacy. Why? One of the major and most important things that the data privacy regulation in Europe has given us, and it's actually the solution of all the problems, in my opinion, is that we must have a business case to get data. It's as simple and as easy as that. Whenever we want data, we ask, why do we need the data? What are we actually going to do with that? You can say, well, I need data for doing a research on my population. Okay, what data do you need? What are you researching? So in that way, you can refine what data is required and why you're using, which is exactly one of the mandates from the new legislation. We learn from the law that we actually need to inform people. So by properly define the business case, we actually are also required then to provide that information to the customers. Why? Because we need to tell them what we do with their data. They need to be aware what we're going to do with it. We can set up controls. So going back to the IT folks saying, we're going to have to change our infrastructure, we're going to do this and that. No, yes, but that's only an enabler. That's actually going to give us a possibility to reuse the data in the all different ways that we need. And by the way, I will come back to this more and more, going back the business case. That's where we can use the data, why we can use the data. And of course, it's an enabler because once we've defined these kind of pieces of information, we can actually implement safely, which is the most important thing that we need to have, especially in a multinational company. Other aspect, very big aspect where we really work a lot is authorization. Authorization is all about who has access to the data. Why do we need to give access to somebody? So how do we achieve that? By defining the data elements. So we can say, okay, for instance, FTE. What is an FTE, right? Everybody will have different views on what an FTE is. But what we've done is we have defined it. And as part of the definition, we also say who is owning the piece of element, piece of data, and who actually shall use that. Why? Because we want to make sure that when we start to use, of course, FTE is not a really sensitive data for data privacy, but it shows who can access it and who can actually do work with that information. So that access definition, so we define the access, who should have access to it. We make sure that there are standard roles in place. So you don't just give access because Mr. Joe Smith, is there any Joe Smith here? Maybe not, okay. Mr. Joe Smith really needed access because I like to have that role. No, actually let's define what are you going to do, what's your part in a company, then we will decide whether, oops. I'm in HR, I'm not IT. No use to technology. And then going back to the one before, we define what data can be transferred. Yeah? So there are a lot of ways legally where we can say, effectively within the company we can transfer data no matter which country it is. Actually, I don't know how many of you are aware of the binding corporate rules. That's a specific set of rules set from the European community. Shell was the first company in Europe to adopt that. And actually we get a lot of requests of help from other companies to help defining theirs. But that binding corporate rules actually allows you, no matter where in the world you are, as long as you are part of one of the Shell companies, you are able to transfer data. It's really important, it's key, and it cuts a lot of problems around the implementation of IT systems. As you can see, all of these, going from an obstacle to defining all the different aspects, really gives us a base for analytics. We can build our IT infrastructure safely. We can make sure that our bosses make decisions based on data. That was one of the goals we've had for at least the past 5-6 years, and that's where Esther will show you how we do that. But it's really the base for us. Without that, we cannot really do analytics. And of course, then we introduce anonymization. Analytics is all about putting data together, so it's not about Marcello's data, it's not about Esther data, it's putting everything together and present a picture of where you are, where you're going. Last but not least, and actually usually I present this, when I do an internal speech, I present this part as the first part of why we do data privacy. However, I wanted to present it as last, just that I can leave you with that idea. Data privacy for us means not creating any troubles to people that have trusted us with their data. A customer fills in a nice form, gives us the data because we need to, for instance, send them marketing information or things like this. So an employee gives us forms because they want to be paid and they want to be receiving information, communication from the company. So the most important aspect for us around data privacy is that we do it because we respect people. It's really focus, it's really the central area of our job. We do everything for respecting people. And effectively what is also, it's a natural series of events because respect for people and data privacy, it's actually one of the human rights. It's in the Human Rights Act, respect for privacy. So we need to be able, as a proper company, as a company that want to be trusted by vendors, employees, that we actually do respect people. And therefore trust, that's the big word here, trust. We want to give the kind of feeling to people that, hey, we are a company that can be trusted, we are a company that does the right things, and therefore we want to make sure that we respect your privacy. You know why we collect your data, what data we collect, and therefore you can feel safe when you give us the data. So far, this is working pretty well. In HR, we've seen a big improvement around data privacy, around knowledge of people. So it's a journey. It never stops. It will never stop. I guess it will become maybe more stricter even with the world getting more global. But yeah, it's a journey that will be there, and Thank you for your attention.
Thanks. All right. I'm going to give you a case study on D&I today. So this is a little bridge. This is a small piece of reporting showing the amount of employees we have. So this is about 92,000 over the year 2013. Soon we will have the 2014 results released. So I'm going to cover this in the upcoming slides. So I'm going to make use of the room, I think. And if I think about the quotes that I just gave, what you would do is you would sort of make a gender ratio of this part of the room, a gender ratio. You have a lot more women than this part of the room. Like, you would divide them all in pieces. And at the end of the summit, or maybe this talk, I'm going to count the number of words on your notes, right? And I take that as a measure of performance, and I'm going to see whether the fact that you have more women resulted in more words on your notes, right? And maybe the male parts of the room had less notes, and that we can say something that more notes is better performance on my end, or however I will do. So that it would be to define like a univariate, one variable index, right? So I do first for the women, then I look at the age profiles, and then I look at the nationalities. But what I'm interested in is to define, actually look at part of the room and actually sort of add it up, right? So how can I add up like the age profile with the gender ratio and the number of nationalities? Can I combine a single index and say this is 50% diverse, that's 30% diverse, and that's 70, right? Whatever the outcome, it's all an example. So we actually have already done this piece of work in cooperation with the Copenhagen Business School. So we know how to define an index like that. So after you've done that, it's of course interesting to see what parts of the business, what parts of Shell are most diverse, right? So can we say something about our upstream being more or less diverse than our Dutch operations? Or can we say something about, anyway, so can we find differences? Is it that female leaders have more diverse teams? Or is it that younger leaders have more diverse teams? Or can we say any observations? So basically the reporting part of the whole exercise. And then very often when people talk about D&I, they actually refer to inclusion. So it's the perception of people of how inclusive they feel in their direct work environments. So it's measured in an annual survey, and it's, I'm sure you have the same, right? You measure the perception of inclusion. Right, and then the final part of the piece of work is, so what is actually the business outcome, right? So what are the benefits of our D&I policies that we have in place and that we firmly believe in? Usually when you read about it, it's like a woman in the board, more turnover, right? More business results, or but is it actually as simple as this, right? So is it really like, is it a matter of making a board of 100% women, and then that's maximum business opportunity? Probably it's not, and we don't know what it looks like, but it could as well look as something like this, right? Diversity is good until a certain point that it starts working against you. And it's not that I'm advertising this as the model, but so this is the piece of work we haven't done yet, but I'm curious to find out. And it's difficult, because it's difficult to measure performance. So I made a joke about counting the number of words you put on your pads, right? But the real question here is, how are we going to measure performance? We can't do that for all of Shell, but we can do that in specific parts of the business, right? So we can do that in parts of the business where we have objective measures of performance. So we will do it there, and hopefully we can learn lessons that we can apply in other parts of the organization. All right, I need to check my time. So in the end, whatever we find, we use that as a learning, and it should never, so the limitations of analytics is that it should never become a set of rules, right? We shouldn't start hiring people, look for that perfect candidate that will increase, that will optimize our diversity score in specific parts of the business. That would be very silly. So it's about the culture, and in this case, it's more about the learning. What does it actually mean for the company, rather than something that will be driving towards recruitment decisions. Okay, let me get back to the data privacy part of things. I started off with more data is better, and Marcello started off with you need a business reason to actually investigate data. So there is a conflict there, but actually we don't, because the business reason is pretty clear here, right? We would like to learn what the benefits are of our D&I policies. We have also, if we think back of the iceberg model and we say that the so we have data about our employees, we know their age, we know their gender, we know their skill pool, like their background. If that is diverse, if we're diverse on those aspects, and we take the assumption that we're also diverse on the invisible parts of the things that we don't have in the databases, then we can also say that we don't need to go beyond our shell systems on data that we have. So we don't need to buy data from social media and add that to the profiles of people, because I wouldn't be comfortable with that, and perhaps all our employees wouldn't be very comfortable with that. So we make a decision, like we stick with the data that we have in our databases, and we will take that assumption of the visible parts are reflecting the invisible parts of the diversity.